The greatest catastrophes in human history did not always arrive with trumpets of warning. Some came silently, some were buried under centuries of dust, rewritten by victors, or erased by fear. Long before modern records, entire populations vanished. Cities that once burned with life were swallowed by ash, water, or darkness. Trade routes collapsed overnight. Empires that seemed eternal fractured in a single generation. Ancient texts speak of days when the sky turned black at noon, of seas that rose without storms, of fires falling from the heavens. Archaeologists uncover layers of destruction so sudden, so complete, that daily life appears frozen in time. Meals left unfinished, tools abandoned, temples half-built. These were not slow declines. They were moments when civilization itself nearly reset. Yet most people have never heard of them. Historians debate whether shifting climates, cosmic impacts, volcanic winters, or human arrogance triggered these disasters. The evidence is fragmented. The stories are incomplete. But what remains points to one terrifying truth. Humanity has come closer to extinction before than we like to believe. Entire cultures were erased so thoroughly that only broken stones whisper their names. And if these ancient worlds could disappear so quickly, what does that say about our own? Because some scholars now believe one forgotten catastrophe may have reshaped the entire course of human civilization, and the clues suggest it was far worse than anything written in textbooks. So what really happened to the ancient world when history suddenly went dark? For thousands of years, early civilizations flourished along rivers, coastlines, and fertile plains. Agriculture expanded. Trade networks stretched across continents. Knowledge passed between cultures in ways once thought impossible for the ancient world. But beneath this progress, nature was quietly shifting. Ice core samples reveal sudden temperature drops that lasted decades. Tree rings show years of failed harvests. Sediment layers record massive floods and violent storms striking regions that had once been stable. Ancient societies noticed something was wrong. Myths began to change. Gods grew angrier. Flood legends spread across distant cultures that had never met. Stories of fire from the sky appeared from the Middle East to the Americas. Leaders tried to adapt. Cities built higher walls. Farmers changed crops. Priests performed rituals to stop unseen forces. But warning signs were ignored. Population pressures strained food supplies. Political power centralized. Trade routes grew fragile. Civilizations that depended on delicate environmental balance were unknowingly approaching a breaking point. When one system failed, others followed. A drought in one region meant famine in another. A destroyed harbor meant economic collapse hundreds of miles away. The ancient world had become interconnected, and that made it vulnerable. Scholars now believe a chain reaction had begun, one disaster triggering another across continents. A slow tightening of history's grip. And then suddenly something massive struck. Something that pushed fragile civilizations past the point of recovery. What followed was not decline. It was collapse. The archaeological record shows an abrupt line. Below it, thriving cities, trade goods, organized societies. Above it, ash, rubble, abandoned settlements, and silence. Some regions were consumed by fire so intense that stone partially melted. Others were buried beneath thick layers of flood debris. Entire coastlines shifted. In certain cities, skeletons lie where people fell, suggesting no time to escape. Food storage systems vanished, writing stopped. Monument buildings ceased almost overnight. The Bronze Age world, one of humanity's first complex global networks, shattered within decades. Theories vary. Some scholars point to massive volcanic eruptions that darkened skies for years, destroying crops worldwide. Others suggest a cosmic impact, sending shockwaves of climate chaos across the planet. Still others argue cascading wars erupted as famine drove desperate populations into violent migration. Perhaps it was all of them, a perfect storm of natural disaster and human fragility. What makes this period terrifying is its speed. Civilizations that had survived for centuries collapsed in a single generation. Children were born into chaos where order had once ruled. Knowledge was lost. Technology regressed. Entire languages disappeared. Human history did not slowly turn a page. It was ripped apart. And when stability finally returned, The world was fundamentally changed. But the most unsettling part is what the evidence implies. This was not humanity's first near extinction. It may not have been the last. From the ruins of these forgotten disasters rose new civilizations, but smaller, more cautious, and haunted by stories of divine punishment and world-ending floods. Ancient myths may not be fantasies at all. They may be cultural memories of real catastrophes passed down through generations. The collapse reshaped migration patterns, political systems, and the very foundations of modern society. Entire regions were repopulated by survivors who carried fear in their stories and resilience in their blood. Yet many records were lost deliberately. Later empires often erased evidence of past failures, preferring narratives of divine destiny over vulnerability. History, as we know it, may be a carefully edited survival story. Today, scientists recognize how fragile civilization truly is. Climate shifts, interconnected systems, and resource dependence mirror the conditions of the ancient world before its collapse. We assume progress protects us. The ancients once believed the same. The Earth has ended civilizations before without warning, and it left only broken cities as proof. So the question remains, not whether humanity can fall again, but whether we would even recognize the signs before it happens. Because what if the greatest disasters in history were forgotten for a reason? And what if the world is far closer to repeating them than we dare to imagine? When historians began comparing distant collapse events, unsettling similarities emerged. Civilizations separated by oceans showed identical warning signs before disaster struck. Agricultural surplus declined. Political power concentrated. Faith systems grew more extreme. Violence normalized. These patterns were not isolated. They repeated. From the fall of early river civilizations to the sudden abandonment of once dominant cities, collapse followed a recognizable rhythm. Stability bred complexity. Complexity bred fragility. Fragility invited catastrophe. What is most disturbing is that many societies appeared aware of the danger. Records suggest elites sensed environmental stress, but chose short-term control over long-term survival. Resources were redirected toward monuments, warfare, and displays of power rather than adaptation. In some regions, evidence shows desperate attempts to preserve order through fear. Executions increased, fortifications expanded, borders hardened. Instead of saving civilization, these actions accelerated its end. Scholars now believe ancient disasters were rarely caused by a single event. They were multipliers. A drought alone was survivable. A volcanic winter alone was survivable. War alone was survivable. Together, they were not. Collapse was not an accident. It was a consequence. And what history hides best is this. Civilizations do not fall because they are weak. They fall because they believe themselves unbreakable. Once that belief takes hold, adaptation slows. Warning signs are dismissed. Dissent is silenced. By the time reality asserts itself, there is no system left capable of responding. The ancient world did not fail to understand nature. It failed to understand itself. And that may be the most dangerous lesson ever forgotten. Today, technology gives humanity the illusion of control. Satellites watch the skies. Algorithms predict behavior. Global systems deliver food, energy, and information at unprecedented scale. But scale is not strength. The ancient world collapsed when interconnected systems failed simultaneously. Modern civilization is more interconnected than anything that came before it. Climate instability, resource depletion, mass migration, political fragmentation. These are not future threats. They are present conditions. The difference is speed. Ancient collapses unfolded over decades. Modern systems operate in seconds. A failure in one region now echoes worldwide almost instantly. Some historians argue that humanity has already entered a familiar phase, one that ancient civilizations reached just before their disappearance. Not decline, not collapse, but denial. History rarely announces its turning points. It reveals them afterward, through ruins and unanswered questions. Future archaeologists may one day study our cities the way we study ancient ones, wondering how so much knowledge failed to prevent disaster. They may uncover data centers instead of temples, highways instead of trade routes, and still ask the same question scholars ask today. Why were the warnings ignored? The forgotten ancient disasters were not anomalies. They were rehearsals. And the most unsettling possibility remains unspoken. What if humanity did not learn from them because it was never meant to? And what if the next forgotten disaster is already unfolding, not beneath the earth or in the sky, but quietly, within the systems we trust the most?